In this presentation, we're going to continue on to other sections, most prominently being the banking section. Let's engage with Sage 50 Cloud Accounting. Here we are in our Sage 50 practice file for Bellwether Garden Supplies. You can follow along with the free demo version. We are in the actual software in the practice file for Bellwether. We're going to be down here in the banking section. So we're going to be starting off with the banking section. We took a look at some of the major flows that we had, of course, including the customers flow or the accounts receivable flow or the sales flow, or the cycle, you might call it, the vendor cycle, the accounts payable cycle, and so on, and then the payroll cycle. Now, the banking doesn't really fit within a cycle, so it's not something that you're going to say, hey, it's the banking cycle. Not really the same thing. However, banking, including the cash component, is, of course, involved in every other cycle. So, obviously, cash is going to kind of be part of like the lifeblood of the company, of course, and therefore, the cash and the checking account is going to be something that we're really going to have to look at closely, unlike any other account. If you look at the cash account, in other words, you're going to see that it's going to have a lot of different things that are going to both increase it and decrease it. If you consider any other account on the financial statements, typically there's only a couple different things that happen to it, right? The accounts receivable goes up with, accounts receivable going up because people owe us money, and then it goes down because we paid it off. That's it. With cash, you're going to be having it included in every other cycle. So therefore, by us checking cash and looking at the flow of the cash, we're also checking and looking over other flows that are engaged in other components of the business as well, pretty much every kind of accounting flow as we go through. So we have some of the major forms that we've seen in prior sections. Note that the check form we see duplicated here. We saw it in the vendor section as well, because obviously one of the checks that we write are typically to vendors, but we might make checks to other people as well, so it seems reasonable to put it over here in the banking section too. Then we have the account registers. If you go into the registers, you can have our different kind of registers for the different accounts. The default register then going to the checking account register. The register is similar to what you might see if you had your old checkbook and you're going to enter into the register. Now, note you can actually take a look at transactions in the register too. So we could go directly into the register, say enter a payment and so on and so forth. And we may do this with future transactions as we go through our practice problem. So I'm going to close this back out. Then we have the analysis tools, including the cash flow manager, collection manager, and so on and so forth. We've got the chart of accounts. So this is kind of like not really part of the banking section, but the banking section is kind of picking up some of the other type of activities. So obviously the chart of accounts is going to be an important thing. An important, I would call it, list as being trained. So you can probably find the chart of accounts, or you can find the chart of accounts up in the lists up top. So that we have our chart of accounts here. Included within the chart of accounts, we can make a new account, view and edit accounts, and set up account defaults. Then again, we have the receive money. We've seen the receive money form in the past because we're hoping that the receive money form typically is going to be part of the customer cycle. It's part of us receiving money, hopefully from the customer. But we may use the receive money form for other type of activities as well. We may get money for other reasons. We may have an increase, in other words, to the checking account for something other than from the customer, and therefore it would make sense for the receive money to be here in the banking section as well. Then we have the enter bills. Again, we've seen the enter bills before. That was in the vendor section. We also have the enter bills here in the banking section. We have the bank deposits. So we saw the bank deposits before as well, because again, we're hoping the bank deposits is kind of part of the customer section cycle. So we would like the major component of the bank deposit to be ending or starting and ending with deposits from customers typically. But obviously, we might have to deposit information that would be from something other than the customers as well. And so therefore, it would be appropriate to put it here in the banking section. Same with the pay bills. So we've got the pay bills information. We saw that in the vendor section. Also here in the banking section, because of course it would be related to the banking information. Then we have the reconcile accounts. So we have the reconciliation information. So typically, obviously, the bank reconciliation being an important reconciliation that needs to be done at the end of the period, one of our major internal controls. So for example, if you chose up top, we're going to pick the checking account. Then we have our kind of reconciliation type of information. We'll talk more about reconciliations in a future presentation as we go through practice problems. Then we have the general journal entry. This is a place where we can enter the general journal. Again, something that's not just strictly related to the banking situation, but the banking is kind of picking up other normal or common tasks as well, and the journal entry is going to be one of them. Now, note that the journal entry is kind of like the last resort, really. If you went through financial accounting, you may want to think, you probably have a mindset of, I want to do everything with journal entries, right? That's kind of how I thought, what are these forms? I can't see what the journal entry is doing here with these forms. I'd like to see the actual journal entry. But usually, if there's going to be a process in the system, they're going to want to do it with a form, and you're going to have to just mentally know the journal entry behind it. And that anything that's going to happen on a day-to-day process, that will be the case. And then anything that isn't on a day-to-day process, then you're typically going to make a cash payment or receive type of form. And then if it doesn't apply to cash and it's not something that happens all the time, like an invoice, it doesn't involve cash, but it happens all the time. If it's something that doesn't happen all the time and doesn't involve cash, that's usually when you have to basically go to the actual journal entry and enter a journal entry for it. Then we got the reports, and we have the intelligence reporting. And this is going to be a way to kind of format our reports. You'll note that we looked at the reports and kind of the standard reports that are the default reports. There's a lot of flexibility when you integrate the intelligence reporting because it's going to integrate the Microsoft 365 and the Excel. So it can be a little bit kind of overwhelming or intimidating to learn the intelligence reporting. But once you understand that and have that flexibility with Excel, you got far more flexibility that you can do than most, a lot of accounting software that are going to give you kind of like the general reports and some formatting within the database system. If you do an integration with your data that you're getting from your database system with Excel and Microsoft 365, then you can do a lot more customization. So just be aware of that on the reporting. We might get into more detail on how that works in future presentations, but that could be a whole course in and of itself. Then we have the inventory and service. So it's another section up here, the inventory and service. Again, inventory and service is kind of part of the purchases cycle, right? Because if you're dealing with inventory, you're going to be purchasing through the purchasing cycle, which is basically the vendor cycle. But we have the inventory because there's going to be certain needs for inventory in and of itself. So we have the inventory tracking. If we're tracking the inventory within the system with a perpetual inventory system. Company services, new company service, view and edit company services, we've got, and the assemblies. And then, of course, we have the purchase order, which we saw in the vendor section, and the receive inventory. This is going to be the two components that you would think would be kind of in the normal vendors or purchasing section. Then we have the inventory count, inventory adjustments, and then reports. The reports jump into the inventory section within the reports. If we take a look at the inventory count, then we're going to have our information with relation to the inventory and this can help us out with basically a physical count. It's going to list out our inventory items, and if we have the physical count, we can say here's the location, here's the count, and then basically who's it counted by. So that's going to be our information with regards to the inventory. Then we have the cloud and mobile section down here, and if you get a pop-up here, it says apps and services get a one-click access to cloud and mobile offerings that are included with the Sage 50 Cloud from this convenient dashboard. You can connect easily to cloud features or get more information to see how these apps and services benefit your business. Already connected to the cloud service, click Manage Service to view your service setup. So this is going to be kind of our integrations with the cloud that you have the options with the Sage 50. Again, that's one of the major components with the Sage 50 is you could basically integrate it with the Microsoft 365, which is, of course, is the package for the Microsoft Office and products within it. One of the major ones being that you can link and have help with regards to the reports being the Excel. And then you've got your systems information down here. This is not, again, like a cycle type of information. Obviously, the cloud and the systems aren't typically a cycle information, but one of the major things that we'll have a component of the backup and restore information here. So considering it has a desktop kind of component to it, the backup process is useful, something that we want to do, and something that is necessary to do. It can be a useful component to be able to have those backup files and know how to back them up and restore them. We have the data maintenance information. So this is going to be kind of information that on the right where we can make records inactives, record end processing, and so on and so forth. So this isn't going to be a normal kind of flow type of system, both the cloud and the systems, but some of the added kind of sections, obviously, within the Sage 50. So that's going to be it for now. Let's get out of here.